Hi everyone, in this video I'll be looking at estimating the population side of organisms that are mobile. Before we do so, we need to look into a couple of definitions that are crucial for our understanding of the communities and populations unit. Firstly, we're going to look into the definitions of species. Now, this is something that you might know from IGCSE biology, but they're essentially organisms that can interbreed with each other in order to produce a fertile offspring. Now, what I mean by a fertile offspring is any organism that can mate together in order to produce another fertile offspring to produce and reproduce their children. Now, we're going to look into the definition of populations as well. Now, populations are defined as essentially organisms of the same species, and they're known to live at the same area in the same time. So they need to be concurrent in terms of their time era, and at the same time they need to live in the same area as well. Next, we're going to look into the definition of what a community is. Now, communities are essentially different populations, so they're going to be different species. They'll live together in the same area and at the same time. We're going to elaborate on the definitions of populations and communities later on, but let's move on to ecosystems for now. Ecosystems is essentially just community plus the environment. Right, and one thing more to mention about community is that because they consist of different populations, however live in the same area at the same time, the sort of relationships that these different populations, species can exhibit can really vary. It can be a predator-prey relationship, or it can be something like a symbiotic relationship, or it can just be a competitive relationship. We'll be looking at different types of relationships later on. Now, if we were to elaborate on the definition of populations, we would also say that because they're members of the same species, they can interbreed with each other, but at the same time, they can also cooperate and compete with each other. And we will be calling this intraspecific competition. Now, let's actually move on to the main agenda or the main topic of this video, estimating the population size of mobile individuals. Now, if we're measuring the population of a group of plants, of a bunch of plants, we would easily be able to measure that by using density, by using quadrats and counting how many squares are covered by the plants or vegetation. However, if we're talking about mobile organisms, because they move around, it's very difficult to accurately count how many organisms there are, and also, especially if they're very, very small, say like a colony of ants, it's much more difficult to accurately count each and individual single of them. Therefore, we use a method that's called the capture, mark, release, and recapture method. Now, it's quite self-explanatory. To start off with, we capture a random sample, a random group of individuals, and then we mark those same individuals, and then we release them. After that, we recapture a group of other organisms or individuals of the same species, and then we count how many of the recaptured individuals, organisms, are marked. And from then on, we can do a little calculation involving percentages in order to estimate the total population. And we call this the Lincoln Index. And the Lincoln Index is used to calculate and estimate the number of species, and the equation is as follows, where we have M, which is the number of individuals that are initially captured, divided by R, the number of individuals that are marked in the recaptured group, over N, which is the number of individuals that are recaptured. Now, using this equation, we're generally able to estimate the total size of the population.